The secret to having unshakable self-confidence lies in two things. First one is fully accepting yourself unconditionally. And that's what we will talk about today in part 1 of this episode. The second one is having a compelling future and a plan to attain it. And we will talk about that next time in part 2 of this episode. So, let me ask you this very simple question. Have you fully accepted yourself, just as you are, with all your faults, weaknesses, shortcomings, errors, as well as your assets and strengths? Have you? I believe that self-acceptance is at the heart of every other good thing that will happen to you. And I'm not talking about dejected self-acceptance here. No, I'm talking about real, affirmative, positive, and unconditional acceptance of yourself, and not looking for other people's opinions to validate who you really are. Many people tend to identify themselves with their circumstances, and thus totally end up messing themselves up in their minds when their circumstances change, as they indeed will from time to time. Remember that you are not your circumstances. You are not, for example, your mistakes. And neither are you your riches. What you need to realize that you are a master of your circumstances, whether those be mistakes, riches, or whatever else it is. You are the master. You are not what those things are. The greatest breakthrough and the greatest success in your life, in my view, is going to be self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is the springboard and catalyst for changing any of your circumstances. The late Maxwell Maltz, an American cosmetic surgeon and the author of Psycho-Cybernetics, a book I highly recommend that you read, articulated the subject of self-acceptance so well that I find it quite irresistible to defer to him and share with you what he had to say about self-acceptance. That's coming up next. I am Sterling Libbs. Welcome to Embolden, the podcast. I believe that one of the most valuable gifts you can give yourself is that of being true to yourself. Being authentically you and living your life the best way you can without pretending to be someone else or trying to please everybody in order to fit in or be accepted by others. Your journey to becoming more inspired and emboldened to live an authentic and successful life starts right now. Maxwell Maltz said, "No real success or genuine happiness is possible until a person gains some degree of self-acceptance. The most miserable and tortured people in the world are those who are continually straining and striving to convince themselves and others that they are something other than what they basically are. And there is no relief and satisfaction like that comes when one finally gives up shams and pretenses and is willing to be himself or herself. Yourself right now is what it has always been and all that it can ever be. You did not create it. You cannot change it. You can, however, realize it and make the most of what already is by gaining a true mental picture of your real self. There is no use straining to be somebody else. You are what you are now. You are somebody not because you have made $1 million or drive the biggest car in your block or win at the bridge, but because God created you in His own image. Never compare yourself to anyone else unless that person is the one looking at you in the mirror. And in that case, look them in the eye and say, "Hey, you look amazing today, and I love you." Most of us are better, wiser, stronger, more competent now than we realize. Creating a better self-image does not create new abilities, talents, or power. It releases and utilizes them. We can change our personality, but not our basic self. Personality is a tool, an outlet, a focal point, if you may, of the self that we use in dealing with the world. It is the sum of our habits, attitudes, learned skills, which we use as a method of expressing ourselves. Self-acceptance means accepting and coming to terms with ourselves now, just as we are, with all our faults, weaknesses, shortcomings, errors, as well as our assets and our strengths. Let's admit to ourselves and accept the fact that our personality, our expressed self, or what some psychologists call our actual self, is always imperfect and short of the mark. No one ever succeeds during a lifetime in fully expressing or bringing into actuality all the potentialities of the real self, that is the image of God within us. In our actual self, the expressed self, we never exhaust all possibilities and powers of the real self. We can always learn more, we can always perform better, we can always behave better. The actual self is necessarily imperfect. Throughout life, it is always moving toward an ideal goal, but never arriving. The actual self is never static, but a dynamic thing. It is never completed and final, but always in a state of growth. It is important that we learn to accept this actual self with all its imperfections, because it is the only vehicle we have. He further went on to say, "We are engineered as goal-seeking mechanisms. We are built that way. When we have no personal goals which we are interested in and which mean something to us, we are apt to go around in circles, feel lost and find life aimless and purposeless. We are built to conquer environments, solve problems, achieve goals, and we find no real satisfaction or happiness in life without obstacles to conquer and goals to achieve. People who say that life is not worth living are really saying that they themselves have no personal goals which are worthwhile. Always have something ahead of you to look forward to work for, and to hope for. Look forward, not backwards. Develop a nostalgia for the future." And I think it's Brian Tracy who once said that, "Don't ruin a good today by thinking about a bad yesterday. Let it go." And shall I add, let it go indeed. And be forward-looking, plan for the future, have compelling goals. And in addition to having personal goals, have at least one impersonal goal to help your fellow man, not out of duty, but because you want to. It will do you a lot of good. I could not resist sharing those preceding wise words from Maxwell Maltz with you, and I hope you found them very edifying, just as I did. There is only one you, unique, fearfully and wonderfully made, one of a kind, special. Fall in love with yourself. Accept who you are from every vantage point, and then watch the amazing transformation that will happen in your life. Accept yourself and become your most ardent advocate and defender. No human being on earth will ever love you more than you love yourself. And I therefore advise that you become very practical and confident in the way you show yourself love. For example, take yourself out for a meal, or for a game, or for whatever you really fancy. Buy nice things for yourself. Choose good friends for yourself. Always talk positively about yourself. Don't shoot yourself on the foot by talking negative about yourself. Be your own cheerleader. If you don't, who will? You see. Defend yourself against abuse and being taken advantage of. And take very, very good care of yourself. Look after yourself very well. You are unique and you should embrace your uniqueness unapologetically, with grace and confidence. Accept yourself and be authentically you from every vantage point, and never apologize for being yourself. If you do that, and all that has been talked about in the preceding sections of this discourse we have had today, I am very, very sure you will start developing that unshakable self-confidence. There's a lot you can achieve in life when you're confident, and especially having that unshakable self-confidence. So I implore you to really work on that. Accept yourself unconditionally, fully accept yourself. I am Sterling Libs, and you've been listening to Embolden, the podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable, and if so, you can download and share it with your friends or anyone else who might benefit from it. And if you have any questions or comments about today's episode or any other episodes of this podcast, I would love to hear from you. Get in touch via my website at sterlinglibs.com, where you can also find more resources to help you succeed in life. And if you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts and subscribe, rate and review this podcast. Join me next time right here for another emboldening conversation. Till then, be sure to take good care of yourself, and thanks for listening.